Thank you. Hi, it's Simon Lewis from Reuters. I just firstly wanted to come back to the issue of the World Central Kitchen workers, the 7 workers who were killed by an Israeli strike. I had the honor of actually knowing one of them, Zomi Frankom, and I can testify to her zest for life, kindness, and selflessness that we could see in the work that she was doing. This morning I've seen an image of her Australian passport covered in blood. It's quite striking. Secretary Blinken, you've been warning for several months about the need for more humanitarian aid to get into Gaza. You recently talked about the near famine conditions there. This is the reason why these World Central Kitchen workers were there. You've called for an investigation, but this isn't the first time that aid convoys have been hit. This isn't the first time that the Israelis have been taking action that's restricted aid, both going into the Gaza Strip and being distributed. So I really wanted to ask, are you going to do more if this continues? This has continued for months. Is there more that you can do than simply raise these issues with the Israelis? And if their investigation comes back with certain findings, is there some action that the United States, as the main backer of Israel, is going to take regarding that? And secondly, France has proposed a new UN Security Council resolution on Gaza that goes further than the one that the US abstained on last month, calls for decisive and irreversible measures taken by parties towards a two-state solution. Secretary Blinken, you've called for a pathway to a two-state solution, a Palestinian state. So will you support such a resolution? And to the Foreign Minister, regarding that resolution, are you assured of having US support for that? The US has used its veto several times since October to block resolutions on Gaza. So would you call on Secretary Blinken to not use the veto in this case? Thank you.
Simon, with regard to humanitarian assistance, going back to the very first trip that I made to Israel after October 7th, a few days later, in every trip subsequent to that, I and many others, starting with President Biden, have worked to impress upon Israel the moral, the strategic, the legal imperative of doing everything possible to provide humanitarian assistance to people who need it. And of course, we've seen Israel take important steps over the last 6 or so months, whether it was opening Kerem Shalom, whether it was actually starting by opening the Rafah crossing to begin to allow assistance in, Kerem Shalom, guaranteed fuel deliveries, flour through the Ashdod port, opening a new gate, 96 gate, just a couple of weeks ago. Now the maritime corridor that many of us are working to establish. They've taken steps, but it is, simply put, insufficient. It is not enough to meet the needs of the children, the women, the men in Gaza who remain caught in a horrific crossfire of Hamas's making. So in our conversations with the Israeli government, including just last week when the defense minister was in Washington, and just yesterday when we were on a video conference with Israeli counterparts, we impressed again upon them the imperative of now surging and sustaining assistance, and not only getting it into Gaza, but within Gaza, getting it to everyone who needs it, including in the north, where, as you know, the conditions are the most challenged, and where World Central Kitchen was laboring to get assistance to people. So we and many others, including France, are intensely focused on this, and we are looking very carefully to see that necessary steps are taken to ensure that the assistance needed gets in and gets to people who need it. This also involves issues like much better coordination on the ground. We'll see what the investigation of the incident with World Central Kitchen reveals. but coordination has been a perennial problem, deconfliction, as well as other challenges, destroyed roads, lack of trucks within Gaza, things of that nature that have to be remedied, as well as the access points into Gaza. Having said all of that, I'm not going to get into hypotheticals or get ahead of myself or get ahead of the administration. All I can tell you is this is an area of intense focus and absolute necessity. When it comes to the Security Council, France and the United States work very closely together as permanent members on pretty much every issue that comes before the Council, including this one, and I look forward in the days and weeks ahead to talking about the current effort, other efforts that may come forward. We share the same objectives. I think, based on my conversations with Stefan, I think we both agree that getting an immediate ceasefire to enable the release of hostages and the surging of humanitarian assistance would be the best next step that we could have to actually really change things on the ground. So we want to make sure that we're maximizing the efforts to do that. Negotiations with regard to a ceasefire and the hostages are ongoing. We also agree that we have to find a path to a durable, lasting peace for Palestinians and Israelis alike. And we both agree that ultimately that has to include the establishment of a Palestinian state with necessary security guarantees for Israel. So we're aligned on the fundamentals, and we'll be talking in the days and weeks ahead about any of the measures that are before the Council.
Oui, de notre côté, nous avons déjà salué l'adoption de
a week ago commended the adoption of
nous appelons d'ailleurs
the resolution,
les
and we, as a matter of fact, are calling on all parties to
s'il n'y a pas de respect du contenu, il n'y a plus de droit international et il n'y a plus de
otherwise there is no
réglementation
international law anymore
multilatérale.
and no multilateral solution.
La France est également, et vous
France,
l'évoquiez,
like you said,
à l'initiative pour
is
travailler
also
au Conseil de
working on an
sécurité,
initiative
avec
of the
d'ailleurs ses
Security
partenaires dont
Council,
les États-Unis,
together with
sur les
its partners,
paramètres
including the
de
United
cette
States.
sortie de crise,
We're
notamment
working
les
on the
paramètres politiques.
parameters of
Alors il y a
how
plusieurs
to
endroits
exit
où
the crisis,
on
including the
discute des paramètres
political
politiques,
parameters.
dans un
Of course,
certain
they're
nombre de
being
cercles
discussed in
diplomatiques
different
où on
fora,
construit
within a number
autour de
of
la solution
diplomatic
d'ailleurs à deux
circles.
États
We're
l'ensemble des
working on a
dispositifs qui
two-state
pourraient être la
solution,
voie
all of the different
de
possibilities
déboucher
of
sur la
what
crise
could lead
politique
to
et accompagner
an
effectivement d'un
end to
cessez-le-feu,
this
de
political
l'entrée
crisis with a
d'aide humanitaire et d'un
ceasefire
dispositif
and the
politique qui
arrival
nous
of
permette de
humanitarian
garantir
assistance and a
la
political
sécurité de part
architecture
et
that
d'autre.
would
Et
enable
puis,
to have
nous
security
avons
on both
également
sides.
discuté avec le
We
secrétaire d'État,
also,
et c'était aussi le
together with the
sens
Secretary of
de ma
State,
visite
talked
en Égypte avec mon homologue égyptien jordanien.
about
C'est
another point,
également
and that was the
une
purpose of
partie de
my
la visite
visit
que j'ai
to
effectuée au
Cairo
Guyana,
on Saturday,
qui est également
where I
membre
met
élu
my
du Conseil de
Egyptian and
sécurité des
Jordanian
Nations Unies,
counterparts, and
sur
in
ces périmètres
Guyana
justement de sortie de
as
crise
well.
et une éventuelle
We
résolution.
talked
Pour
about
tout
the
vous dire,
boundaries and
nous allons
how to
continuer
exit this
à
crisis.
concerter l'ensemble
And
des
we will
membres
continue
du
to talk
Conseil
to
et
all the
plus
members of
largement,
the
je pense,
Security
les
Council,
pays qui
and
sont
more
dans la
broadly
région.
to the
Et nous
countries
devons
of the
pouvoir, et
region.
c'est notre intuition
And we
et
have
notre certitude,
the
trouver un
intuition,
consensus
the
qui est
feeling
le
that
plus
we
large
can
possible
find a
autour de la
consensus
sortie
as
de
broad
crise
as
durable.
possible for a
Ça doit en
sustainable
passer
way out of this
par
crisis.
une nouvelle résolution,
this,
ça en passera par une nouvelle résolution. Il peut y
will require the adoption of a
biais, il y
new
en aura un
resolution.
autre, mais en tout cas, je
If there
pense que
can be, or
c'est de la
there shall be
responsabilité de la France
another way,
d'entrevoir
and there
cette
will
solution.
be, but such is what
Nous
this is
allons
what
prendre une
France
dernière
is
question
working
pour
on.
la presse française.
One last question on behalf of the French